to report to the state every single year. And the state sends us back this lovely report full of names and want to know, why does so-and-so have 15 days absent? Why does so-and-so have 35 days absent? You know, so part of my job was I have to explain why, and whatever my interventions were and whatever we worked on at the school level. So last year, out of 16,862 students, and right now we have 15,476 students. So we lost a bunch of kids, meaning less dollars. 5 or fewer days absent, we were at 33.8%. 6 to 15 days absent, 39.6%. More than 15 days, 26.7%. Chronic absenteeism, which the state considers 10 days or more, we were at 27.1%. Ridiculous. Now, we do everything we can at the school level. We have to establish an attendance contract. All this information is right on the website. You can see this. You can see what the attendance policy is. You can see what the discipline policy is. We send letters at 5 unexcused absences, asking the parents to come in for a conference, establish an attendance contract with the parent, and it has everything that the law says that we can refer to juvenile court. If they're elementary school students, we can refer to DFACS at a particular point. We do all this, and the kids still stay absent. At 6 to 15 days, we have to decide what we're going to do. Tardies are also counted. The amount of tardies that you see are ridiculous. So if you're supposed to be in school at 7:35 in the building, in class at elementary school, you strolling in at 8 o'clock means you have missed 20 minutes worth of instruction, because you're doing something, whether it's a beginning problem of the day or whatever's going on, there's instruction going on. So I've had kids that have had 45 tardies. I've been out to the house, I've called the parents, I've done everything I know, stand on my head, and then I've had to make a DFACS report because the kids are not coming to school, or they're tardy and they're missing, or they're getting checked out. Same holds true for secondary schools, but we can't even go there with tardies, because who can count them? These kids are all over the place. They walk in, they may be tardy to first period, they may be tardy to fifth period. Sometimes the teachers don't mark attendance, and that becomes an issue if you have to try and find somebody, especially in an emergency situation. And if you have a substitute. So they can't get into the computer to mark the kids, so the absences don't get generated till the end of the day, which is not a great thing either. So that's an issue. And that's not just Rockdale, that's all over the place. Attendance has always been an issue. Virtual students, they can turn their camera on, doesn't mean that they're doing anything, you know, and so that was a huge issue during COVID. Lots of technical issues. Oh, I'm sorry, I see somebody has a hand up. Connie?
Yes, how are you?
Hey.
Hey, I had my question was about the attendance. Tell me what the excused attendance is, because I know one of them is medical if a child has a doctor excuse, but are there any others that they have? I just want to know. I may not know.
Yes.
Thank you.
There are. You can, if your parent is a member of the military and they're coming home, it's an excused absence. There's a religious observance. Everything must be, you know, by a note. If a parent is incapacitated, let's say a parent just has had surgery and wasn't able to drive their child to school or get them to the bus and things like that, you know, we tried very hard to, you know, work with the parent. So there's those are those 5 absences that are by state law allowed. Now, some parents will certainly, you know, write that they had a planned vacation. Well, you know, when school starts, and no, that's just, I'm sorry, you're going to Hawaii. You should have taken me. And, you know, no, you're not going. You know, we can't excuse that. So it's just for whatever the state allows. And that's written very clearly on the website and in the attendance policy. And we send that home via paper copies. Now, we did try and do something via email, and the parents have to sign this to say that, oh, I've read this. So we kept copies, at least in my elementary school, we kept copies of what the parents signed. So when they came back to us and said, well, I never told, isn't this your handwriting? Oh, no, same thing with the discipline code of conduct and the technology that they recognize that if their kids are caught, I forgot what the word is, what they're doing, how they get around the whole firewall. There's a wall that they that they're able to do because they're so good at it. So that's what we do. So some of the fun stuff, and we work with the parents, Connie. I mean, sometimes there are extenuating circumstances. You know, we're not, our thing is not, you know, we don't want to put the courts in anybody's business or defects in anybody's business. I mean, there are extenuating circumstances that happens, you know, so we try very, very hard. Each school has an attendance support team. So we try very, very hard to make sure we talk to our parents. You know, at the age of 16, though, we can't do anything, you know, so the kids just, so, you know, a couple of the secondary principals are just like, well, why are we doing all this if nothing counts? Our judge will not criminalize it. We've asked to do informal attendance courts, which we used to do in the past. And then they understand it because the law allows the judge to fine the parents up to $100 a day. And way back in the day, you didn't want to go to court because if the kids weren't going, he'd lock them up, or you'd have to go to the day reporting center if you were suspended from school. Now they still have that program, but whether or not it's utilized, I can't tell you. So after the age of 16, and those kids just stop coming to school. And there's nothing we can do. And parents will call. We try and put what we call a CHINS petition, child in need of services, to get to the court. I've had parents who were they were just like, what can we do? He's running wild. I'm afraid he's going to get involved with gangs. I mean, these are parents who want our help, and there's a lot of them out there. And, you know, we just do our very, very best with the resources that we have. So that's a shame. It really is. But sometimes we have to do what we can do. And then when you look at these statistics, you see they're not reading at a proficient level. They're at a beginning learner because they're not doing what they need to do. Okay. This is the fun part. And I'm going to ask Jill to help with this because we looked up on an allotment sheet and found out, because everybody's up in arms, myself included, as to why our taxes went up so high, you know. And like I said in the beginning, the state does not fund the school district in total. They give us money for the full-time enrollment that we have, and they give us money based on the weighted for the classrooms and the classes and the teachers. I'll give you an example. The state pays for 6 social workers. We finally got 6 social workers, not last year, the year before. We got an increase to 8. So the county paid for 2, and that includes salaries and what have you. I can use 15 social workers. All right. I mean, I could literally be busy in one school and do the risk assessments, threat assessments, the counseling, all that other kind of great stuff. I could literally be busy in one school. So we have 8. So that's no big deal. They fund us for 6 psychologists. We struggle to get psychologists, and we contract with a headhunter, which costs an enormous amount of money because we don't pay. So psychologists will go to other districts and make megabucks more. That's why teachers leave too, because they can go down the road and deal with the same discipline problems as we have here. Sometimes our discipline problems are worse, and make $20,000 a year more. Why not? So they're figuring and then they don't have to deal with all the insane amount of focus walks and why aren't your kids learning, and the testing and the testing and the testing that goes on that has not proved to be beneficial at all, except create more and more stress. So the state for 2023, this is what central administration is allowed: $2,561,163 less 5 local mills, for a total of $22 million, let's say. So what the state funds, this is county office. Hold on to your hats here, because Jill and I were just like, OMG, because we thought it was more. The state funds 1 superintendent, 6 assistant superintendents, 1 secretary, and 1 accountant. They also fund 6 special ed positions. Okay. And then under the superintendents, the social workers and the psychologists come under that because we're visiting teachers, or we're not teachers, so we come under the superintendent. But we're just the low men on the totem pole. So everything else that everybody else at the top in that county office comes out of local funding. Everything. And when I'm telling you that building was paid for by SLOSS money, we don't owe anything. We have been a very fiscally responsible building. The buildings are well taken care of. They're always on top of that. Buses are bought when they're needed to be bought, things like that. But we are so top heavy. It's not funny. There are, and you sent me, Corliss, the organizational chart. Jill and I had quite the chuckle over that, because it just says, let's say, school safety. But when you look at what's in school safety, you can't tell me they need all that. And they're at director level positions, coordinator level positions, executive director level positions for work that you could do with one hand tied behind your back. And they're all 6-figure salaries. They're classified positions, so you can make anything you want. And then you have 8 prevention and intervention specialists, which work directly with the students on behavior. We don't get reimbursed for that. Then you have door checkers. Each high school. Do they have 2, Jill?
I know they started with 1. I'm not sure if they're up to 2 everywhere. I think they are at Rockdale.
At Rockdale, they have 2?
I think.
Yeah. So they have door checkers, and this person goes around and checks the doors so the kids don't get out. Now, they're out anyway. The kids are going all over the place. They're doing stuff they're not supposed to do, but that's an expensive position too. A nice amount of money. The state also funds 18 principals. You need that. We have 18 schools. 18 schools in 3 programs. RCA is considered a program. EPIC, which houses the alternative school, open campus, and virtual, is considered a program. And who did I forget, Jill? That's the 3, right? That's,
yeah. I believe
Magnet is a program.
Magnet's a program as well.
So they have a director, so versus a principal, which again, with all that, that's a lot of work that they have. They also fund 26 assistant principals and 30 secretaries, and that's it. So everybody else, the organization, the academic coaches, now those folks work with instruction. They go into the schools and they help the teachers and they do everything. But everybody else in there, human resources is loaded with people, especially people who don't do their jobs and then they become a recruiter. So they're loaded with people, and the county office has enormous amount of waste. And that's, I could say that from being a former administrator, and then just from having an office in there and seeing you have people who are director, have nobody to supervise, but they're a director. Well, why? And making 6 figures. So there you go. Now, are the schools are bare boned. The schools get just what they get based on their enrollment. If they want to use their title money to increase paraprofessionals or hire another teacher, and hopefully you have a baby teacher, so it's not as expensive. So, and I believe that when I was at Peaks Chapel, we would used to get about $95,000 in Title I funds, or maybe it was a little less money. So yeah, we added staff. We paid for that phonics program. We paid for other math programs that we found out that the kids absolutely loved doing. That was important. And that's how we used our money. So there's your main question. There's your main question. Why do you need all these chiefs? Why do you need all these underlings? I mean, underlings, they're directors, they're coordinators. Why? They do not impact instruction. They are not in the buildings. They are not hands-on. They're not. The academic coaches are, because they work with the teachers. But sometimes they're even more of a hassle than, because they have to come in here and again, get in the teachers and say, do it this way, do it this way. And if you don't work on a prescribed fashion, then it's a problem. Principals are not allowed to run their schools as they see fit. Every school is different. Every school has a different feel. What works at Peaks Chapel may not work at Bartsdale Elementary.
You have a hand up, Angela.
Okay. Hey, Shanti. You're muted. I don't know how to help him.
You're unmuted. Leave it there. You're unmuted.
I am. Okay. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, awesome. Hey, thanks so much for doing this. My question was kind of around the QBE and really the larger question I want to get at is like, you know, I got 4 kids in the county, right? I live in Rockdale. What I am curious about is, you know, what does good look like? Like, let's say because let's be honest, like a lot of my neighbors, I got friends who've moved to Cumming and Forsyth, right? Once you get to the point where you have 3 to 4 kids, you either can put your money into YACS or you can take your money out of YACS and put that money into a mortgage, right?
Right.
So my question is like, what does good look like? Like if I'm comparing myself to Forsyth County, I don't know, Gwinnett, Cobb, what does the funding look like compared to Rockdale? Because I know we're a small county, but if you wanted to compare apples to apples, do you have any idea of what good looks like when you talk to your counterparts throughout the state?
Do you mean as far as how the money is spent or how the performance
Yes.
is evaluated?
I guess more so how the money's spent. And what factors go into that? I mean, yeah, I'd love to get an Amazon in my backyard, but I got a 9 to 5, but what can we do as citizens to kind of close the gap?
As far as how the money is spent in our district, between what they get from us as residents and what they receive as support from the state, we have to have more to say to the school board and to the folks who are developing the budget at this point, because it's in session right now, about what they're getting for their money. Because if you're spending this kind of money and you're performing at a D level, that doesn't sound adequate to me. And when you pull other school systems who more than likely receive roughly the same kind of money with less support from their county because their millage rate is lower, yet they're performing at an A or a B, I would love to know how we can change our pattern to be more like their pattern and expectations. We spend a lot of money, but that doesn't necessarily mean we are spending it wisely or necessarily doing what's best for the kids at this point. I don't know if I answered the question.
You're muted, Ashanti. Okay. I think a lot of it has to do too with parental buy-in. I think a lot of it has to do with discipline. I think a lot of it has to do with just overall with no bloat. If you look at Forsyth County's organizational chart, it's been a minute since I looked at it. They don't have what we have over here. You know, yes, you have some coordinators. Of course, you have to have somebody that's going to be in charge of instruction. You have to have somebody, you know, in the budget office. One person just doesn't do that, obviously. But to have the huge building that we have and have run out of space, office space, you can't tell me that that's a lot of what is there. So it's very different. Where should more local money be spent? Areas and programs at the school level. You know, the kids are struggling. The kids can't read. You know, they're struggling. For example, when I was at Peaks Chapel, we were the highest transiency rate, you know, school. At 1 month, we'd get 30 kids to leave and we'd have 50 come in, and you'd have to assess them, and they might have been in 7 or 8 schools, you know, so we need to play catch up. So more money needs to be with more staff at the schools, more, if we could, one-to-one stuff. That's just my own personal opinion. Kids are struggling, families are struggling. You know, yeah, we have social emotional programs, we have some, we just have some things, but it's not enough. So are we going to, it's like having an inverted triangle. You know, the triangle is very wide up top, and then here we have the kids down at the bottom. You know, it seems to me, you know, it needs to be very small up top and give it all to the kids at the bottom. Just a personal opinion and a former parent.
You have another hand up.
Hi, I have a question about, with all of the growth that's being anticipated here, who makes the decision and where does the money come from for new schools? The buildings, infrastructure, or whatever you call it.
Splost, right, Jill? I mean, yeah. I don't know where there's more land for more schools, to be honest with you. And I mean, once Peaks was built in 2002, we automatically had to add on 6 more classrooms because of, you know, they were building that lovely subdivision that was right behind it, and we have apartments over there. So we ended up, now they have more land if they needed to expand. There's no more land for Memorial. There's nothing at Salem. They can't go up because of the structure. There's no, you cannot build at Hightower Trail anymore. You can't even change the way you get into the building. So Honey Creek, you know, with that entire new subdivision that they're proposing, Flat Shoals, they're building across the way, and that's swampland, and that was never built over there. There's no place to build onto Flat Shoals either. There was an extension on that school too, very early on. So who knows? And
so I'm trying to understand. So, I mean, brand new schools, if you didn't extend onto existing schools, what about just new buildings on new land? So, I mean, the city, the county has land. I mean, I guess I'm trying to understand with the planning commissions and everything, you would think they would be taking into consideration. There is land. Obviously, they're selling the land left and right here in Conyers right now. It's a hot property. So there is land to be purchased to build new schools on. I guess no one in the district looks at future projections along with these people with this great vision for what Conyers is supposed to look like in the future.
Can I do my question?
They're actually supposed to be working on projections every time the school year begins and ends. You're really supposed to be looking at the growth patterns and where the growth patterns seem to be. And most of our schools were purchased, the land was purchased with the extra land available for add-on. You'll notice that Honey Creek still has a little bit of area where they can add on where that gravel parking lot is right now at this point.
right.
And even over at RCA, there's enough space back there where we had the ability to add 1 new building and with the possibility of 2 new buildings. Plus we were looking at joining with the city and county and adding a fire station down there on the back driveway as a partnership. And that bus area over at RCA is another area that can be built upon, but you do have to be mindful of designated wetlands and other special areas. But it's generally, anywhere from 18 months to 3 years to get your plans approved. They have to run through the Georgia Department of Education. They have to be evaluated. You have to show need. And you have to have a plan approved about 18 months before you break ground.
Do you know if any plans like that are in existence right now? Because from what we're being told is that when people are proposing these new subdivisions, they go to the Board of Education to coordinate, and they're being told, oh yeah, we're fine. We'll just put you some trailers back there.
And that is exactly what
That's what
they would
happens.
do as an intermediary stopgap measure,
Mhm,
while that would allow them, the bodies, to show need.
mhm.
I had a question. I had wrote a couple questions yesterday for this. And first of all, I was a custodian back in Colorado and we were the door checkers. So, you know, I wish I could have just been a door checker rather than a custodian. But anyway, this is the question. I was looking in the paper yesterday and I got this article on DeKalb County Board of Education. No, it was on TV. They passed on 1 February 23 from their initial E-Splots for funding list and approved for $7 million for major construction, safety, security, equipment, IT, facility condition, program management, and program contingency. And so my question was, I wrote, why can't Rockdale BOE form a forward planning insight committee to communicate with Rockdale BOC personnel that the land on the proposed 540 unit Honey Creek homes that they're planning to put to allot part of the land to be built, to build a high school to accommodate the influx of new students, or in an already overflow of the students in the Rockdale school system, or build a stadium on the land to support high school sports and graduations for 3 high schools in Rockdale that have to have their graduations in DeKalb County. Second question was, I said, the superintendent was asked, how would the new influx of students do to the Honey Creek proposed new 540 housing units? And he said, put a few trailer classrooms together to deal with the overload. Why no forward thinking to serve the Rockdale student population?
Okay.
Like you said, the triangle explains what we got on the Board of Education and the Board of Commissioning. That's all I gotta say. It's
Well put.
bad.
Well put, well put. There's no such thing as a full school. Pine Street's enrollment, let me tell you right now. And JH House is a beautiful new school, and they're not full either. There's no such thing. We just keep on taking them and taking them and taking them. And yes, there is redistricting, and they have redistricted. Let's see. Honey Creek now has 546 students. Pine Street had 643 students. JH House had 573 students. So we're under numbers, we're under projections. Conyers is at 971, Davis 960, Edwards, which would be the school that Honey Creek would flow into, is at 896. Memorial's at 747, and Heritage is at 1336 right now at the 100-day count, which was in January 19th. Can't hear you. Can't hear you.
Okay, I said, to me, I think the BOE and the BOC should do is say, communicate with each other and say, okay, you want to put 540 units there. Why don't you put 300 and then build a school district, school for the in that area.
She's saying they're not overcrowded at this time.
They're not overcrowded,
That's what she's saying.
but they will be. With them 540 units, they will be overcrowded.
Well, and there's building all over the place, you know, and if you think about it, those apartments over by Coles, they are zoned for Hightower Trail. Makes no sense to me whatsoever, but that's Hightower Trail, Memorial, and Salem. So, you know, there's another apartment complex that are going right across the street. So from those apartments, which was Peaks Landing and what have you, so that's all going to go to Hightower. You know, and if you go straight up 138, some of that is Hightower and some of that is Jay's house. Yes, Cheryl. Yes, Cheryl.
I'm sorry. I raised this very same question to planning and development department at Rockdale, because apparently every time there's a new development that's coming, or at least that they do a rezoning application with the county, you know, the planning commission denies these requests often and the BOC approves it. The problem is that there till right now, as far as I know, has never been a cumulative measure of the effect on the infrastructure, whether it's the schools or the roads. And that's really the question. You know, it doesn't make any sense to say we have our capacity is 700 and we have 679 right now, because if you're going to put 500 homes in there and they're 3 and 4 bedroom homes, of course, there's going to be children in those homes. And there's no measurement at all of the cumulative effect. And I was very upset and put out by Superintendent Oates saying, we'll put them in portables, we'll increase the class size. I mean, that was his solution to this problem, because he said that he is constitutionally required to take any child that moves into the district.
That is correct.
My concern is, especially given the information that you gave, and I thank you tremendously. This was a lot of information I've been writing, but given the low numbers of students, in the ratio in the lower classes in the elementary schools, why are so many of those children, you said there's many factors, but why are so many of them behind in reading and math? I understand the truancy and the parental non-involvement, but are there other, measures?
I think that you can cite almost anything as far as measures. A lot of people are saying it's COVID. I mean, you can, but a lot of kids aren't interested in learning. I will say, just having been out of a building recently, that discipline is a huge issue.
Yes.
You cannot teach, when kids are disruptive, and if kids are disruptive, and then it's not just the disruption, it's a lot of things. Parents are not involved. Part of Title I is each school is supposed to have meetings. We're supposed to have a parent compact. Certainly we don't have the parents in the buildings anymore because of COVID, but parents are supposed to be involved with their students. When you have to send the social worker out to knock on the door because the parents are refusing to, answer the phone if their kid's got 105 fever. I mean, these are the type of things that we're dealing with. That's not the only thing. Sometimes these kids are coming from 6 and 7 schools, and some kids have missed 3 months worth of schools. And again, I'm speaking from what I've seen at the elementary school level, but even at the high school level, again, the lack of interest and the lack of the fact that, and I'm just going to be honest here, and these kids are all passing. Every child passes. So why does anybody have to work?
Tammy has a question. Oh, your hands down, Tammy.
Sorry, I was going to let someone else talk.
Was Tammy going to go ahead?
Do you want me to go?
Yeah, go ahead. I can wait.
You can mute.
Okay. I'm going to piggyback a little bit on Cheryl, and Cheryl, I hope you're feeling better. We spoke to several people at the Board of Education about all these applications and their position on not being crowded in the schools. And Phil was very specific. He said, our job is to educate any student that walks through our doors. The Board of Education will never take a position of being overcrowded in the schools.
Correct.
Nor will they take a position to be proactive in building a new school because, and I get this a little bit, 500 units, you can't tell me how many kids and what age those kids will be that will come into that area, just like Flat Shoals, the townhouses. Flat Shoals cannot be built on. If that school gets overcrowded, they will either redistrict more mobile units or they'll have to rebuild that school. And it can't be built on that property because there's not enough space at Flat Shoals.
Right.
But there is no plan as far as the Board of Education is concerned about building a new school right now because they don't know where they might need it or where they won't need it. And yes, from what we've been told, 7 years from grave to, to get the school up, get the plans, get it built and moved on. And by then you could have 15 mobile homes at a school or something, mobile units. And that's our position. If you have a mobile classroom, to me, you're already overcrowded. You got more students than what that school was built to handle. Mm-hmm. What about safety issues for those kids that are leaving those mobile classrooms, moving back and forth? Mm-hmm. Isn't there a safety issue there?
One would think.
So that's what I'll say. But you will never hear the Board of Education tell you that there's a crowding issue. They're never going to take that position, and that's a shame. Mm-hmm. Sorry.
I was kind of going to touch on something you just said, because to me, the classroom size impacts safety. We've already seen what already happened at that middle school where the teacher was assaulted. One of my questions was the average, and you kind of went through the classrooms, no matter what the age, it looks like the size of the classroom is in the 20s. So I guess I had an educational question. It's like, does the age of the child or where they're at, elementary, kindergarten, elementary, middle school, etc., should that impact the size of a classroom? Like you said, kind of for safety issues. Is there are there just teachers in the classrooms now, or does each classroom or which classrooms have certified teachers assistants, or teachers assistants, do they have to be certified? And my last question has to do with the shortage of psychologists and social workers. Is there a possibility that is something that can be contracted out versus them being, hired specific, like you might have a group of social workers or a practice of psychologists that the school contracts with because it costs so much to hire those kinds of professionals and there's such a shortage? Those were my questions.
Well, I'll start with the last one first, but we are fully staffed as far as social workers go. We have 8. And that has been, that was a beautiful thing. Our principals loved us because we were there in the schools. I had 3 schools, which was down from the 5 and or 6. And then if somebody's out, you have to cover. So, it could take me 45 minutes to get from one place to the other place. It all depended upon what was going on. Psychologists, if we probably paid more, we probably could get people to come, but the contracted rate for psychologists, these folks are making 6 figures because we're paying the contractor, not just the person. And, it's a lot of money. So there's a shortage of psychologists. We're not the only school district that has that issue. We have contracted with Academy for Family Empowerment. There's another contract for students who do not have insurance that we've, I forgot the name of the the program. We have a wonderful school-based mental health clinician that was working with non-insured kids, but she had 2 schools, and and she's full. You can only see how many kids you can see. So we tried to get a bunch of people, and we couldn't get anybody. I mean, just because the clinical abilities just weren't there, or people were not interested in working within the schools. As far as classroom sizes, there's a lot of research out there that stipulates and shows that smaller classroom sizes certainly enhances instruction and cognitive development. It works, and they know that. We've been preached at it as how many times, Jill, have we heard that from all the name brand folks, that smaller classroom sizes work.
And some of the classroom sizes are prescripted by the state based on the students the classroom is designed for. Like with career tech lab classes, you're not really supposed to go over 28. If it's a gifted class, they're a little bit smaller. If it's a high intensity special ed classroom, they're small, sometimes 6, sometimes 5, sometimes 8. It just kind of depends on what the content is and the needs of the students. Or as I said earlier, it's the weight of the needs of the student that sometimes will determine how many are in a classroom.
And to the answer to the question, as far as certified teaching assistants, again, that goes back to how you want to use your points. Each school is given points based on your enrollment every single year. And you know that 3rd grade is critical. Kindergarten is critical. I would rather have 15 children in a kindergarten class than 22. Okay, some of these kids have never been to pre-K. Pre-K, you can only have 22. That's a state mandate. But those are 22 little itty bitty babies who've never, and they need to know all their 220 Dolch words before they go into kindergarten. So this is not just playtime and nap time. It is instruction, and it's fun, but it's also instruction. They learn to write, their names, they learn to do basic words. I mean, these kids, when you go through the pre-K programs, which every one of our schools has, and we have a phenomenal early learning program over at RCA. It is awesome for 3-year-olds. It's such fun to go and watch them. We have all that great stuff. So not all classrooms have teaching assistants. Not at all. If you don't have enough paraprofessionals, you just don't. You just don't. I see Connie has her hand up. I hope, Phyllis, I got all the questions that you had asked. Okay. Hey, Connie.
I'm so sorry. I'm cooking. I'm sorry.
Hope it's something good.
It is. It really is. I wanted to say amen to what you just said about the kindergarten class, because my grandson is having issues in this big old classroom, and he did go to pre-K, but he's very shy. He has a touch of anxiety. So when he's in class and all of these kids, and then you go into this big cafeteria, it's intimidating to him, and it does affect his learning. So we have to do tutoring for him. Yeah.
Because the expectation for 1st grade is big.
Yes.
It's big. Corliss, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. You mentioned that the Board of Education or the Rockdale school system is top heavy. And these are all what level and what areas are they top heavy in? Whose brilliant decision is it that they need these additional top heavy? What departments? What title?
Well, there's various departments. You have community and student support, which I was part of, and we have a director, and she is over that. She's over all the school counselors, the school social workers, school psychologists. She's got her hands in a lot of other activities that she needs to be in charge of, and her boss is then chief of student support, and they have PBIS and they have Title IX. and McKinney Vinto. And she also has special education. So special education is a big department, very highly needed. Whether or not it's fully staffed, I don't know. You have the curriculum department. So you have a director of that, and then you have the chief academic officer who's over all that. And then you have people underneath. You have coordinators of each content area for high school, middle school too, right? And elementary, right, Jill? You know, so you have content areas for all that. And they're the specialists that help write the and look at the standards for what the teachers have to teach, and then put that all together and say to the teachers, here, this is what you need to teach. So yeah, and so then you have accounting, you have purchasing, you have human resources, you have professional development. What else?
Well, my question is, where are they top heavy, where they don't need all these positions?
They have tons of positions in each one of those departments. School safety has a lot of people in it.
Well, I'm saying unnecessary positions. When you say top heavy, I took that to mean that they don't need all of that, all this hiring that they're doing and all these positions. So I was wondering what positions are those that are overstaffed?
Well,
it would be hard to name them individually.
right.
Last May, I guess coming up on a year ago, I sent an email to a couple of board members. I didn't get anything back, so I'm wondering if it went through at all. But my concern at that time was that the overall budget has gone up 30% in the last 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And in total, that came out to about 40 million. And with all of that, class size was not impacted. The non-instructional staff and central office admin staff, though, had been increased by 40%. And along the same lines, as the principals would receive their allotment sheets, they were asked to trim staff. And you know, when you're losing students in your school, you do need to trim staff, but you do need to be very mindful of taking from the direct instruction personnel in the schools and yet adding more to the top. I'm not sure that the top has as much impact as the folks involved in direct instruction. But that right there is my opinion.
And that's what we see at the school level. That's what we see at the direct service level. When we're going in and we're seeing that, you know, there's just, how do we do this? The other issue is teacher retention. They're leaving. They're not staying. 7 pages last school year. You know, we had 6 already leave, and you're going to have more. You know, the question is I see the next steps. What are the next steps? Concerned citizens need to be outraged. I'm outraged. You know, I mean, I'm an employee, and you know, everything that we have said today is, there's no secrets to this. This is budgets. This is what this is. This is all out there on the state website. Is anybody to see? It's public information. And you know, the superintendent does his thing, and the board says yes. So why? And look at what Jill just said. 40% increase in the county office. Why not 40% increase in the buildings? You can't tell me that there's not a principal in this district or in any district that wouldn't say yes, please, to more help. There's not a person that wouldn't say anything. And the other thing that needs to happen is that discipline policy needs to really, really be instituted. Again, that's my opinion. Part of my job used to have to go in and do risk assessments and threat assessments for when children brought weapons to school. And if y'all think that that doesn't happen, of course it does. We know that it happens. So
Okay, we
again.
have Cheryl Garcia.
Sorry. So I'm happy you brought that up because I'm very concerned about the violence in the schools. And my understanding is that they don't have metal detectors at every high school or middle school, that they're rotating it around, kind of a surprise. Guess what? Today you get checked, which is ridiculous. But I'm of the impression that there's no, for Rockdale, there's no central repository for documenting these violent incidents. That there, if let's say a kid slaps a teacher, there's a disciplinary note that goes in that kid's file and something in the teacher's file, but so that the schools are not considered dangerous.
Correct.
These incidents are not being reported to the state. I think that has a lot to do with why parents or kids are sending it to the media. And I understand that's also part of why the superintendent wants to have his own police staff, because Sheriff Levitt's like disgusted. He's done. So is that pretty much your perception as well?
Well, it's not so much the perception, it's the reality. They have two discipline systems. One is called Swiss. I don't know, I can't remember what the acronym is, but that's where the teacher would put a referral in and the administrator would read it, when we got a notification, and handle it, whether or not a child was disrespectful or, what have you. Certainly if somebody was out of control, you push the white button. Every room has a panic button, and you're supposed to respond. We did look up the discipline record and it's online, and got quite a couple of laughs out of it, to be honest with you, because I didn't see one thing for a weapon. And we know for a fact
Yes, right.
that, for a fact that it has been. So no school, no district, and this is including everybody else, wants to be known as, an unsafe district. Nobody wants to be known as that. So they put it into Swiss and then say, oh, but we're doing positive behavioral intervention supports, for everybody, which is, incentive programs to be good. And while that's reportedly, it's evidence-based, how good it is, I don't know. I've been part of it. I've been trained. But, the reality of it is you've sent a child to the office and then they come back with some candy. And I've seen this happen. It's not prevalent throughout the system, of course, but I'm just giving you an example of that's what happens. So, what happened lately? Is this child going to be expelled and sent to the alternative school? I would hope so. So yes, does he want his own police force? Absolutely. And I have taken issue with it, and because again, Department of Juvenile Justice does not necessarily listen to us. If part of my job is to go in and do a threat assessment for, let's say, a fifth grader who had a knife in his bag, had no intent to harm anybody. It wasn't a terrible thing, but enough that, I contacted law enforcement, the parents and what have you. And Department of Juvenile Justice decided that, that was worth 12 points and they were going to remand the kid to DJJ. I was livid. And yet I'm at a high school and I got the same thing, a bigger life with intent, and the kid didn't even get arrested. So tell me how that works. So when the person from school safety comes in like, well, this is why we want our own police force. Oh, so we don't have to deal with this? This is not okay. Sure, did the kid need to go talk to the judge? Did the parents need to be? Was there intent there? No, it's not the point. He needed a consequence, but he didn't need to go to juvenile. There is no consistency whatsoever, Charlotte. And it all depends, and it's the school safety that makes that decision, not even the principals. You are not allowed to make those decisions on your own. You're not allowed. They tell you what you do.
Okay, so it sounds like all of this comes from up top, starting at Dr. Oates. Does that mean that he's not performing or he's not doing his job. And that's basically what I see it as, for this to continue. And he mentioned about 99.3% graduation rate.
What? That's not what we saw.
There's a breaking news, and he mentioned it at the front porch the other day, that the graduation rate is 99.3, but he mentioned 1,600 students. I'm assuming that is for the Career Academy.
Yes.
Another advanced, so that's maybe a possible 2,000, but that's consistently being mentioned, and you can't base the whole school system off of those students.
No, you
That's-
can't.
That
know.
99% was for career tech pathway completers.
Okay.
They do have a very high graduation rate because for a lot of those kids, that is exactly what keeps them in school and interested. So
Well, as citizens, how do we get him to start correcting what's going on in the school? Because if you go and you make public comments, it's just you're talking for 3 minutes. What do you think that the citizens can do to change these statistics?
Well, I have to tell you, this has gone on a very long time, even with the past superintendent, and, the board is a rubber stamp. I'm sorry. They just let the superintendent do whatever they want to do. And that's, and they give a very pretty, presentation. And I do recall at one of the work sessions that one of the board members asked the superintendent, well, which elementary school is not performing? Well, it's in your packet. No, the public needs to know I knew exactly which elementary school it was because they've been low performing since I left, but he wouldn't say it publicly. And this board member's position was the public needs to know. But no, this looks very pretty. Everything is nice. And exactly what Jill just said, how could you say 99% without explaining what exactly it is 99%? I think, didn't we see like 81% for 5-year graduation rate? It was a little below the state. So that's not a terrible graduation rate. But if you truly gave every single kid the grades that they deserve, that graduation rate would not be at 81%. I'm here to tell you that.
So you said the board is a rubber stamp. This is where I can't understand, and I think Charlotte tried to explain it to me. The board members are elected. He's hired. So why would he have any say so or in the millage rate? When he only have his focus should be only on the school, the performance of the school and the classrooms and the books and performance of the educators?
I think that the superintendent, along with, the accounting office and, his cabinet, puts forth recommendations. This is what we're needing. They put forth a budget as well, and budgets are based on the millage rate and what have you. And I do remember one of the first meetings that we had, just to go back to what we were talking about as far as, and I did ask Cindy Ball, well, what is the school system's position on, all these new builds, all this new, the lack of infrastructure, the lack of staffing, the lack of, we have a retention problem here. What are we gonna do? And she just said that we work jointly with the Board of Commissioners and the planning department. So the superintendent puts forth his budget, his recommendations based on what his staff gives him, as far as needs and what have you. And yet he meets, as does the other superintendents. They meet the principals. And I've been to 1 or 2 of those principal meetings where they beat you over the head, quite honestly, for poor math scores. And then they switch principals and assistant principals around and shuffle to see if that's going to make a difference. It doesn't. Consistency makes a difference, and we know that, but again, it's something that, you know, when I say rubber stamp, I mean, I've just seen it. I've been there 26 years. You know, sometimes staff is not listened to. You know, so they do what they do. Erlene, I'm sorry, I saw your hand. I apologize. We can't hear you.
No, I just had a thumbs up to her. Let's vote, because the superintendent needs to be voted out. So that was just a thumbs up for him. He needs to go,
Well,
my opinion.
he got a bonus, so you know, he got his
Oh,
contract.
geez.
And if you look at the scores, you can manipulate statistics all you want, you know, and in the early years when we were doing CCRPI, we went down we were one of the lowest districts. We were at a 65 and we moved up 1 point. That is not a record to be proud of at all.
So his bonus is not, it's not, they don't consider the school performance or anything for his bonus? What do they consider? I mean, it seemed like that would be, how's your school performing? Because that's a direct reflection on the Dr. Oates or the superintendent.
I don't have the answer to that. Do you know, Jill?
I really don't know. I'm going to take the same stance I have taken in months past, is the board will only know what they're told.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, he probably has he's probably met performance markers throughout. I just don't know what they are.
Mm-hmm.
And he's probably missed a few here and there. I do have a suggestion. If we ever do get to where we're having a good conversation with the board, I would love for them to consider going back to having the superintendent have to live in the district. Because it's nice to impose taxes on other people. It's a little different when you're having to bear the brunt yourself as well.
And that ended with Dr. King.
Yes, he was the last one to live in district.
Yes.
Used to be for principals too.
That is true. That is true.
What information do you think the board needs to be made aware of?
Sometimes I think they don't know the questions to ask because they don't know what's being left out.
Mm-hmm.
So just like that one report that about which the schools and their performance, are you leaving out something? Are you not giving the whole story? Or talk about the retention at the school system. Are you shrinking the staff? That sometimes they don't necessarily even know what the points sheets are that go out to the principals and how their staff has been cut, because it looks like any reduction is handled strictly through retirements or resignations or something like that. So sometimes I think they're kind of at a loss for not really having all of the information. Sorry, my dog is chewing a toy.
And you ladies are going to give us all the information. I understand you're going to have a meeting. Is it every first Thursday of the month?
Yes, we're happy to do that. We need to tailor the meeting so we can figure out how best to move forward. We could talk all day long.
Right.
How do you educate the board? We've had on the board, you know, former employees. They know how things work, and things didn't change. So that's why I say sometimes, and again, this is my personal opinion. You know, there's a lot that could be done, needs to be done. I don't, you know, see us moving from a D district anytime soon, unless we put our money where our mouth is, and that's in each building.
I'm sorry, Cheryl Garcia.
Yeah, I was going to mention that in digging through the BOE's website at some point in time in the past, there is a policy about the rationale, the objectives for the superintendent's incentive bonus. There is a document that exists. What I found, unfortunately, even with the planning commission, is that sometimes people who sit on these boards and commissions don't know what they don't know. And I mean, the planning commission never had a copy of the comprehensive land use plan. How are you going to approve or deny those kinds of, requests when you don't even know what the land use plan looks like? So I think that's the same issue, or maybe the same issue with the school board, is that they have no idea what the criteria are for approving the incentive bonus for the superintendent. Clearly, he doesn't deserve it. But I think perhaps there's board members that don't know that he should not have gotten it. And so they just vote for it. Yeah, of course, there's going to be some that, they'll do whatever he says, but and those need to be voted out. But, I see a name on this group that I love, and she's very vocal about her stance about the school board. And I appreciate that. But I think there's others that don't know what they don't know. So there is a policy. That's the long answer to the question about that.
But they're also not being told. You're absolutely right.
Yeah,
Sheila.
right.
Everything is lovely. Everything is lovely.
So maybe the next meeting, we can invite some board members. Okay, so we are 30 minutes past time. It was a very informative meeting. I think everyone enjoyed it and learned a lot. Hopefully you will attend the next meeting. We'll send out an email letting you know when that's going to be and what's on the agenda. But one final question is that the suggestion forms are out for the citizens to fill out for the budget. Do you have any suggestions on, well, I know the top heavy decrease the, what do you want to call those, management, or what are you, upper level, what do you want to call them? Decrease that staff? You're on mute. I'm asking for just suggestions of areas that we can put on the suggestion form.
Decrease class sizes, number one. Increase staffing at schools.
Yeah, it's almost a restructuring kind of
Totally.
situation, though. That would take more than 1 year and one budget cycle to accomplish that. But it's a great plan to start moving in that direction, I think.
Okay, increase class size and
Decrease
class size and increase staffing
at school level, at the school level.
Okay.
And there's just a lot more that you can certainly, do at a school level if you have additional staffing for the kids.
All right, well, we appreciate you, ladies. Cheryl, you still have your hand up. Did you have one more thing?
I do. I'm sorry. Now that I've listened to you ladies, you're a wealth of information. What I plan to do is go to the Rockdale Schools website and look at the FY23 approved budget and go through it and see those titles, because those forms that they put out, those suggestion forms, they want to know what's the cost savings. How much do you think it will save? Well, I'll have to look at the budget to see, like, you have 9,000, janitors, and you only need 900. So, and then look at how much they're being paid so that I can accurately fill out that form. See, I didn't know how to do that until these ladies brought up those, that information. But I think the best way for us to do that intelligently is to look at the FY23 budget and see those positions, and then we can tell them exactly how much they can save on these positions that they don't need, all these directors with nobody under them. That's my only point. Thank you.
Okay, with that said, we're gonna wrap this up. I appreciate all of you coming out and attending the meeting. And as I stated before, you'll get additional information for the next meeting. Jill and Angela, thank you for the wealth of information. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to meeting with you again. Okay, and I'll send the recording out to all the attendees. I do apologize, the very beginning, I forgot to hit record, but I think you'll have the meat of the meeting and what I do.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for joining, Sandra, Jackson, Lett. Thank you, Sandra. Maybe she's not there.
Thank you. Thank you all for this, for being the people that you all are. Remember to attend the board meetings.
We will.
Oh, we'll be there.
Come on out and voice your concerns and let your concerns be known.
Okay.
There's conflicts with the planning commission this coming week and Sherry Washington's chat and chew. So until they try to stop overlapping government meeting dates, it's hard to divide our time.
I understand.
We just have to attend the most important, but you all have a good evening and thank you very much.
Good night, Grandma, and all the rest of you.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.
Good night, Miss Jackson.
Good night.